My wife slept with her boss, then secretly transferred $200, $0 of our savings into his account before disappearing. Now he's claiming the house and threatening to sue me for custody, and I don't know what's real anymore. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, my life was pretty straightforward before all this chaos started. I married Lisa about 5 years ago. She was always a bit high maintenance, but I loved her, thought we had a good thing going. We had a nice house, decent jobs, a pretty comfortable life. I never suspected anything was wrong until a few months ago when small things started to change. She became more secretive, more defensive when I asked her about her day. She'd brush off my questions with those fake, dismissive smiles that now make my skin crawl. At first, I just thought she was stressed, or maybe she was secretly working on some project at her job. But then, I noticed her phone kept buzzing at odd times. She'd hide it quickly when I entered the room. Her messages suddenly became more frequent and less innocent. I caught her in a few small lies, like claiming she was at the gym but I saw her car parked outside her boss's house. That was strange enough, but I shrugged it off, telling myself I was overthinking. Still, deep down, I felt something was off. It's amazing how your gut can tell you when something's wrong, even when your mind refuses to accept it. The real shock came when I started digging. I wasn't snooping, just paying more attention to her habits. One night, I decided to check her email. I know, big mistake, but I was desperate for clarity. What I found knocked the wind out of me. There were dozens of emails with her boss, Mark, filled with flirtatious messages, plans to meet up, and even some explicit talk about sex. They'd been sneaking around for months, apparently. The worst part was the transfer of our savings 200, moved from our joint account into some account under Mark's name. That's when I knew it wasn't just an affair, it was betrayal on a whole other level. I confronted Lisa the next day. I told her I knew everything about her affair, the money transfer, everything. She didn't deny it at first. Instead, she looked me dead in the eyes and lied through her teeth. Said Mark was just a friend, that I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. She made it sound like I was overreacting, like I was crazy for suspecting her. But I had the proof right there, screenshots, bank statements, her own emails. Still, she kept insisting she loved me and that it was all just a mistake. She said Mark was just helping her with some business deal, and that the money was for a new investment she was planning. Yeah, right. I felt sick. I'd never been cheated on before, and suddenly I was faced with this woman I thought I knew betraying me so blatantly. The anger was overwhelming, but beneath that was this crushing sense of betrayal and sadness. I started to question everything. Our entire life together, the vows we took, the future we planned. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? I couldn't sleep that night, replaying the moment in my head, trying to understand how it all fell apart so fast. And the worst part, she was still denying it, still pretending everything was fine, even as I showed her the proof. I realized then that I was going to have to make some serious decisions, but I didn't know what those would be yet. All I knew was that my world was crumbling, and I was left standing there, trying to hold the pieces together. After that first confrontation, things didn't get any easier. Lisa acted like nothing had changed, like she hadn't just been caught red-handed. She threw her usual tantrums, called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her, and said I was just jealous because Mark was more successful than me. That hurt worse than I expected. I always prided myself on being a good husband, providing for her, making sure she was happy. And now she was tossing around accusations like I was the one cheating. I didn't want to believe she was capable of this level of deception, but the evidence was there. I started to think about everything, how she'd been acting lately, the lies she told, the money gone from our bank account. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I decided I needed to find out exactly how deep this went, so I hired a private investigator. It was the only way I could get the truth without her knowing. I needed to see her with my own eyes to confirm what I already suspected but couldn't prove. The pie came back with some shocking news. Lisa had been sneaking out late at night, meeting Mark at his house, sometimes even staying over. There were pictures of her leaving his place in the early morning. And get this, She'd been transferring the money into Mark's account over a period of several months. She'd even set up a secret account in her name to funnel the cash, then transferred it to Mark's account in chunks so it wouldn't raise suspicion. I couldn't believe how calculated this was. She planned this whole thing behind my back, and I had been blind to it. That night I sat alone in the dark, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. My stomach was clenched tight, my fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. I felt so betrayed, so stupid for trusting her. How could she do this? How could she lie so convincingly? I kept replaying her words, her fake tears, her pleas about how much she loved me. It was all bullshit. She'd been lying from the start. The woman I married, my wife, was now just a stranger hiding a secret life. I felt rage building inside me, a kind of fury I'd never experienced before, not just at her but at myself for not seeing it sooner. I knew I had to act, but I wasn't sure what my next move should be. Part of me wanted to confront her again, to demand answers, to tear her apart with words. But I also knew that this wasn't just about words anymore. It was about the future, what little I had left of it. I started to consider my options. Should I confront her directly, or should I lawyer up? Should I fight for my rights or just walk away? The thought of losing everything, including the house, the savings, maybe even the kids, made me sick. But I also knew I couldn't stay passive. This wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown betrayal with financial theft, lies, and manipulation. I had to decide how to protect myself, how to get justice. I reached out to a lawyer the very next day. I needed legal advice on how to handle the money, the house, and the potential custody battle if it. To that, the lawyer told me that Lisa's actions could be considered fraud, especially the transfer of our savings without my consent. That was a small victory, but I knew the fight was just beginning. Meanwhile, I kept digging for more clues, trying to piece everything together. I had to prepare myself for whatever was coming next. I felt like I was in a war I didn't sign up for, and all I wanted was to wake up from this nightmare. But I knew deep down that the truth wasn't going to go away. It was only going to get worse before it got better. The days that followed were a blur of planning and trying to keep my head above water. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lisa's face, the lies she told, the way she looked at Mark like he was the only person who mattered. It was all so surreal. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let it get this far. I thought I knew her, but now I realized I was living with a stranger, someone who could lie so effortlessly, cheat so blatantly, and then act like the victim when confronted. I started documenting everything, screenshots of emails, bank statements, recordings of her calls when I could catch them. I wanted everything in writing, everything that proved her deception. It was my insurance, my ammunition if I needed to fight her legally or just to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. Meanwhile, I spoke with friends, even a therapist. I needed someone to talk to who wouldn't judge me. The thing is, I knew my wife was manipulative. She'd always been bitchy and controlling, but this was next level. She'd lie and lie to cover her tracks, and I was starting to see how good she was at it. Then, unexpectedly, she left. Just packed her bags and disappeared one night without warning. She texted me once, saying she needed space, that she was going to stay with her sister for a while. I knew it was just her running away from the mess she created. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just cheating. She was trying to wipe her hands clean and leave me holding the bag, but I wasn't going to let her get away that easily. I filed for a temporary restraining order to keep her from taking the kids or selling the house. It was the first step to reclaim some control. While she was gone, I also started to dig into Mark's background. I paid a private investigator again, this time to find out more about his life, who he was, what he did, if he had any skeletons. Turns out, Mark wasn't just some successful boss. He had a shady past. Multiple failed businesses, some allegations of fraud, even a few lawsuits. That made me wonder, was Lisa just after his money all along? Or did she genuinely fall for him? Honestly, I didn't care anymore. All I knew was that I had to protect what was mine. The house, the savings, my dignity. The emotional was brutal. I swung from anger to despair, from wanting to lash out to just crying in the shower. I kept telling myself I'd get through this, that I'd come out the other side stronger. But deep down, I was scared, scared I'd lose everything. My mind kept racing. Could I prove she was stealing from us? Could I fight her for custody if she tried to take the kids? And most of all, could I trust myself not to break down? I felt betrayed not only by Lisa but also by the life I thought I had built. Every day was a battle to keep my composure, to stay sane, and to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. I knew I had to be strategic because she was manipulative and dangerous in her own way. If I was going to survive this, I'd need to be smarter, tougher. And I was starting to realize that this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about saving what little I had left of myself. The legal battle started to take shape, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. My lawyer laid out the options clearly. Lisa's theft of our savings, her affair, and her attempts to claim the house could all be challenged in court. The transfer of money was a clear case of fraud, and I had enough proof to push for a settlement that would protect my rights. Still, I knew this was just the beginning. Lisa's disappearance had thrown everything into chaos. I had to prepare for her to come back swinging. Or worse, try to take everything I owned. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on her, trying to stay one step ahead. I installed security cameras around the house, changed all my passwords, and kept a close eye on the bank accounts. I wanted to be ready for anything. One night, I received a call from the pie I hired. Mark was spotted at a fancy hotel with Lisa. They'd been seen leaving together, looking pretty cozy. That was almost too much to handle. I felt my stomach churn and my fists clench again. How deep was this? How much more was I supposed to take? I also started reaching out to friends and family, trying to piece together what I could. Some of them knew Lisa had been acting strange lately, but none of them knew how bad it was. That's when I realized how good Lisa was at hiding her true self. She had everyone fooled except me, apparently. I wondered if I'd ever really known her, or if I'd just been blind to the signs. The betrayal cut deep, but I refused to let her see how much she was hurting me. I had to keep my composure for my sake and for the sake of the kids. The most shocking moment came when I found out that Lisa had been secretly transferring money from our joint account into an account under her name, then funneling it to Mark. It was a lot more than the $200, $0 I'd initially discovered. It was nearly $500,000 over the past year. I couldn't believe she'd gone that far, betraying me financially and emotionally. I felt betrayed all over again, by her lies, her manipulations, her greed. I had to ask myself, how much more was she willing to take from us? How deep was her deception? I decided I needed to confront her again, face to face this time. I wanted answers, real ones. So I reached out, demanding she come back home so we could talk. She replied with a long, angry message, saying she was done with this game, that she was free and didn't want to be controlled anymore. That was the moment I realized she was planning to leave for good. I knew I couldn't let her walk away with everything. My house, my savings, my kids' stability. I had to act fast. I filed a motion for full custody of the children, knowing that her unstable behavior and her affair made her an unfit mother in my eyes. It was a long shot, but I had to try. As the legal process moved forward, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and dread. I was finally taking control, fighting for what was rightfully mine. But I also knew Lisa was dangerous. She'd lied, cheated, stolen, and now she was trying to escape the consequences. I felt like I was fighting not just for my assets but for my very sanity. I'd been betrayed so deeply that I wondered if I'd ever trust anyone again. Still, I kept pushing forward, determined to protect my future and my kids. Because if there's one thing I learned through all this chaos, it's that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. The courtroom hearing was a nightmare I wasn't prepared for. Lisa showed up with that bitchy smirk, acting like she hadn't just betrayed me and everyone else. She spun her usual lies, saying she loved the kids, that she was a responsible mother, that I was just bitter and jealous. But I had the evidence, bank statements, emails, her secret transfers, the pie's reports. I laid it all out, watching her squirm under the weight of it. The judge asked tough questions, and I could see her trying to manipulate the situation, but she was losing control. In the end, the judge granted me temporary custody, citing her suspicious behavior and the financial misconduct. I felt a flicker of relief, but I knew this was just a game of chess. She'd fight back hard. Meanwhile, Lisa's lawyer immediately filed an appeal, claiming I was trying to ruin her life and that I was paranoid. That was her typical tactic: play the victim, deny everything, and hope the court would overlook the truth. I wasn't naive anymore. I knew she had a network of lawyers and manipulative tricks, but I was determined to stay one step ahead. In the meantime, Mark kept pushing for more contact, trying to sway the court with his charm and false promises. I found out he'd been trying to buy Lisa's silence, offering her money to drop the case and leave town. That made my blood boil. How far was she willing to go? How much more of my life was she prepared to destroy for her own greed and selfishness? I kept thinking about the house, our home, the place I'd built our life around. She wanted the house now, claiming she had a right to it because of some vague contributions she'd made. But I knew better. I had put in the effort, the money, the time. She was just trying to steal it all in her sick game. The kids were the hardest part. Seeing them torn between us, knowing Lisa was basically trying to manipulate custody in her favor, made me feel sick. I wanted to protect them, to shield them from her lies and greed. I knew she was trying to turn them against me, painting herself as the victim to get their sympathy. But I also realized I had to stay strong for them. I started spending more time with the kids, showing them that I loved them unconditionally, even as the chaos swirled around us. I kept reminding myself that I was fighting for their stability, their future, even if it meant going through hell for a while longer. Throughout all of this, I felt a strange combination of anger, heartbreak, and resolve. I was angry at Lisa for everything: her lies, her betrayal, her greed. I was heartbroken because I loved her once, and now I saw her for who she truly was. But more than anything, I was determined not to let her ruin me. The money, the house, the kids, they were part of my life, and I wasn't going to let her take them away without a fight. I realized that revenge wasn't just about getting even. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my future, and the life I deserved. I'd been knocked down hard, but I was getting back up, ready to face whatever came next. The final court date was supposed to be the culmination of everything I'd fought for: my home, my kids, my dignity. I felt exhausted but also strangely relieved that I'd made it this far. Lisa was in full damage control mode, trying every trick in the book, crying, shouting, even trying to bribe the judge with false promises of changing. It was all so transparent, and I knew deep down she was just desperate. I sat there listening to her manipulate the court, knowing I had everything on my side. The evidence I presented was irrefutable: her emails, the bank transfers, the Pi's reports. I knew this was the moment I'd finally get closure. When the judge finally ruled, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was awarded full custody of the kids. The house was legally ours, and Lisa was ordered to pay back the stolen money. The court also issued a restraining order, forbidding her from contacting us or trying to interfere further. It was a hard-won victory, but in that moment I knew I had reclaimed some semblance of my life. I looked over at my children who were clinging to me, and I felt tears welling up. We had been through so much, and I knew this wasn't just about winning in court. It was about healing, moving on, and rebuilding what was broken. Lisa's reaction was bitter. She screamed and accused the court of rigging the system, but her words fell flat. Her facade had cracked, and everyone could see through her lies now. She stormed out of the courtroom, still trying to manipulate her way out of it, but it was too late. The damage was done. Mark, too, was nowhere to be seen. He had vanished. After the court ruling, probably realizing he'd lost his best chance at controlling me or getting what he wanted. As I walked out of the courthouse with my kids, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd lost a lot: trust, years of my marriage, financial security, even my sense of safety. But I'd gained something more important: my integrity and my future. I spent the following weeks slowly rebuilding. I changed the locks, cut ties with Lisa completely, and focused on restoring stability for the kids. I found a new job that paid better, and I started therapy to deal with the emotional scars. It wasn't easy, and I still had moments of doubt and anger, but I knew I was moving forward. Looking back, I realized what I learned from this nightmare. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals who people really are. Lisa's greed and manipulativeness showed her true colors, and I refused to let her define me anymore. I learned that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail to protect what's yours, and that honesty and integrity are worth more than any amount of money or material possessions. I still have scars, but I also have hope. Hope that I can rebuild a life on my own terms, free from lies and betrayal. And if there's one thing I want others to take away from all this, it's this: never let anyone steal your peace. Stand up for yourself, fight for your future, and never underestimate the power of truth.